first and foremost, let's just ask the most important question, which is why should a voter in Jacksonville vote for you?
First of all, as I mentioned earlier, I'm a lifelong native. I love the First Coast. Back in 2015, when I made a run for sheriff, I looked into the camera at Jacksonville University Public Policy Institute, and I told the citizens of Jacksonville that the city was hemorrhaging from violent crime. Fast forward to 2022, we're hemorrhaging from violent crime. We set back-to-back records, one in 2019 in homicides with 162 homicides. We broke that record in 2020 with 176 homicides. We've had 3 years consecutively with 100 or more murders. We are 6th in the nation, up from 10. We're 6th in the nation in traffic homicides, and as it stands, we only solve like 30% of our cases. 7 out of 10 homicides go unsolved. As a matter of fact, my Republican challenger was in charge of actually solving homicides in the city. And I would pose this question to the public. If you were to board a plane with a pilot that had a 30% success rate of landing that plane, would you board that plane? And if the answer is no, then why would you put that individual in charge of the sheriff's office to lower the homicides?
There are certainly a lot of issues that plague JSO, but from your perspective and where you sit, what is the biggest thing that you would like to change?
Well, we need help from the public. I like to see some public oversight. I'm the only candidate in the race that support a public accountability office inside the sheriff's office, and also civilian review boards. And the reason we need that public accountability office is for accountability and oversight of our operations in real time. What we're having a problem with right now as it stands, the public don't truly understand our policies and procedures, and we don't do a great job of messaging. Our data collection is flawed in many ways, and how we derive to many of our decisions, the public don't know because they don't have a seat at the table. Well, I want to correct those issues by giving them a seat at the table with that Public Accountability Office. And I'd like to make sure I add that Fort Myers, St. Petersburg, Orlando, Tampa, even Atlanta has gotten in on the act. So this notion that we can't make the necessary changes to the charter or expect our city officials to have the public, the taxpayers, have a seat inside the sheriff's office is absurd, and I'm going to make sure I get that accomplished should I become your sheriff.
What does that look like? What would they be doing?
Well, they'll have oversight over a lot of the data that the sheriff would release, typically internal affairs information, notwithstanding those things that may run afoul of the Marshy's Law. We're going to make sure we protect the victim's right, but you'll be able to track police misconduct in real time, so they can help us keep those get to those troubled officers before they become a problem. Sorry. That's critical, and we'll also make sure that they understand how our training is disseminated to the officers and how it applies to them on the streets, because they'll play a role in how we craft that policy, those training policies, be it the policy for crisis intervention training or community engagement training. The public will have a key in crafting that policy from start to finish. And that's not happening right now, and that's why we're having trouble with rebuilding that trust that we need to rebuild with the public in order to lower violent crime. Now, we can wrap our arms around it, but that force multiplier has always been the public. The public has always been the key, and I want to make sure that they have a seat at the table this time around.
In your time that you spent at JSO, just generally speaking, has had issues over several decades. Mm-hmm. In the time that you spent with the agency, what were some of the issues that you saw, and specifically how did you react to those? What was your part in those? And then how would you work to change that beyond just what we just talked about?
Well, that's a great question. We have the officers, 99% of the officers do a great job. They really don the uniform and they try to serve the public's interests. But there's that 1% that is a true cancer to the profession. And we want to weed that 1% out so they can no longer contaminate the 99% of officers that really try to do fine work. That's how we rebuild the public's trust.
As I anchor Sunday nights, and I feel like every Sunday, or pretty close to it, we're running a story about another deadly weekend, another violent weekend in Jacksonville. You've talked about record homicide rates. What would you do to curb violent crime in the city?
Well, first of all, you have to first identify the problem correctly. There's this this notion that we have a gang problem. The former sheriff said there was 47 gangs and 1,200 gang members, and it's simply not. And how can I sit here in front of the camera and tell you that? Because I used to work as an undercover narcotics detective alongside of the gang unit that the former sheriff started. And the methodology that they use to collect gang data is flawed. I'll give you an example. 3 individuals at 3rd and Moncrief may be playing on a basketball court. An officer would roll up on those individuals with a field investigative report and take their name, their height, their race, and whether they have tattoos or not, and then turn that field investigative report over to his supervisor at the end of the shift, and they're now the 3rd Street Gang. Yes, that's how it's done. And if it wasn't, if there were 47 gangs and 1,200 gang members, why haven't you seen the gang headquarters on the news or a gang leader on the news? We could park our cars in the driveway of these gangs if we need be. Okay, we don't have a gang problem. We have what is called a clique problem. The cliques are small individuals. They know each other from neighborhood, and it's a small number of them, but they are deadly. They're not running guns, drugs, and taking over large territories like you would hear the Latin Kings out in California or Bloods and Crips. What they're doing is you disrespect them, they feel disrespected, they're coming after you. And then because JSO haven't been successful in solving these homicides, largely because of the lack of trust between the police and the community right now, these crimes are becoming retaliatory. These are retaliatory strikes, and if we can't tell you who killed your loved one 2 years ago, and you have an idea who that person might be, and JSO is not communicating with you, you tend to take matters into your own hands, and that's what we're seeing plaguing our city. And if we target that with pinpoint precision, and make sure we put uniformed officers out there in those hard hit areas, not to occupy the area, but to build that bridge and that communication that's needed. My plan is also to expand the size of the Community Affairs Division, which is that second piece. So those nonprofits like iCare, Moms Demand Action, the Northside Coalition, those individuals can get out there and do what they do best. With a recognizable brand like the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office, we can get our hands around this here problem. And the third piece of that crime reduction plan is to deploy our covert mechanism, our covert operations out in those neighborhoods. And that's the piece that's going to make all the difference in the world, because now we're actually going after these guys. And when we start serving those warrants on those high-risk individuals, they're going to run out of the county. They're going to hide. We'll find them, but they're going to hide. And you'll start seeing these numbers go down, these homicide numbers go down, because now we're on the offensive. We're not playing defense. We're not waiting on someone to be proactive about it. We're going to be proactive about it with the public's help.
And you mentioned it earlier, talking about the homicide solve rate. In your opinion, what is the homicide solve rate right now?
Well, it's not my opinion. It's actually at 29%, I think it is right now.
And so we did a story on this, actually, and JSO called us up and said we were incorrect using information from their own transparency page, and that their numbers show it's actually something more like 78%. Would you agree with that?
That is incorrect. The solvability rate right now is at 29%. It was 51% last year, they claim. But when you start taking, let me back up just a minute. Homicides and murders are different. Okay, murders are intentional. Homicides are intentional and unintentional. It's a combination of both. And you can take some homicides and actually move them into one calendar year or report them in a later calendar year. It's not illegal. I just think it's disingenuous, but it's not illegal to do so. But that's how the numbers go down in the homicide side.
And you think that's what JSO is doing?
I'm pretty sure that's what they're doing, because the rest of the nation saw a spike in homicides at the same time JSO is reporting this 23% reduction in homicides. However, if you look at the murder indicators, we've been over 100 murders consistently each and every year. Okay, over 400 shootings. And the list goes on and on. Those indicators are violent indicators that they have to report. So in order to drive down violent crime in Jacksonville, we have to get serious about how we get information to the public and how they use that information. And the only way that's going to change is if the public has a seat at the table inside the sheriff's office where they can get that information in real time and disseminate it to their peers. The
federal standard, or at least the federal solve rate for these crimes, is right around 50%, just over 50%. In your opinion, what's a reasonable solve rate for Jacksonville, and how do we get there?
I think it would be the same. I like it to be higher. I like to reach 60% at some point, but we're never going to get there unless we rebuild that trust between the public and the police. It is broken, and it's been broken for several years, decades even, and we haven't changed anything that would actually better the relationship. You know, just simply telling the public to see something, say something, call Crime Stoppers. You repeat that over and over and over again, and it becomes, the people become tone deaf, unfortunately. But if they're inside the sheriff's office and they're holding us accountable and have oversight and they're helping us steer those resources, that $500 million that you pay in taxes, they help us steer that resources in real time, then you'll see those reductions, and we may even reach that 60%. Solvability rate. And that's what I hope to do under my watch.
And this is my last question for you, but based on your background and your education and organizational structure, JSO is a behemoth of an organization. You represent a city, a county because of incorporation. It's a unique situation. Do you think the answer is more of the same, or it sounds like you want to change that? If that's the case, how do you take something that's so big and change the culture?
Okay, first things first. Assuming that the sheriff can do it by himself that's the false narrative right there. Okay, the public has to be there to guide us in everything that we do, from our training all the way down to when we start to execute warrants or even develop new partnerships with the community. They have to have a seat at the table from the beginning of that process. We can't welcome them when the house is burning down and say, okay, help us put out the fire, but don't give them any reason, any real reason why they should be involved. Just help us because things are out of control. Well, things are out of control because you didn't take time to cultivate that trust and nurture that trust that they gave you in the first place. So now we don't have it any longer. That's why the whole city is in disarray. So I'm going from day one, because you only get one shot at it, to rebuild that trust with the public. If the public don't think you're trustworthy, then you can expect more of the same. But I'm going to start out the gate from day one with the public by my side, and everything that we do, we will move forward together as a community. There will be no separate, no one person that has the answer in this city. And I like to also include the media plays a critical role in that too. You guys have been ostracized for a long time, and there'll be good press days for me and there'll be bad press days for me, but I could care less about that. You guys do a great job of getting information out to the public fast so they can use it, and that's very important. You guys need a public information office inside the sheriff's office that works for you. I don't know if you've been around long enough, but you used to be able to go down there and look at those reports and get that information out to the public. So it's a community effort, and we can't lose sight of that. Everybody plays a role. It's not just the sheriff. So that's what I look to bring to the sheriff's office going forward.
Well, is there anything I'm missing that you want to make sure we hit on before we close?
Sure. I would love everyone to visit my website, TonyCummingsForSheriff.com. And also, there's an election coming up August 23rd. Make sure you get to those polls so we can make Jacksonville a better and safer community together.